Buying a house, then regretting it. Let's talk about it.
I'm in the process of buying my very first house as a 28-year-old with no kids. I'm not married. I am in a relationship. I close in 7 days, and I feel like I should be super excited right now and happy, but in reality, I am terrified. And I am so nervous, and I want to back out, but it is literally way too late in the process for me to back out. And I missed my last chance to do that. And so now I am just like sitting here and regretting my decision. But we're just gonna have to make it work. We're gonna have to figure it out. And yeah, I'm gonna be house poor. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna afford food. I don't know how I'm gonna afford gas. I don't know what I'm doing. Who let me do this? Who let me do this?
Okay, so first and foremost, buying a house is a big deal. I'm a mortgage broker and I'm in this business every single day, and I talk to people who are in her same shoes that this young girl is right now. You're making a very big life decision. You're making probably one of the biggest purchases in your life that you will ever make. And it is a daunting, nervous, gut wrenching, are you sure you're making the right decision feeling, but that's totally normal. Now, what's not a good idea is purchasing a home and not understanding how you're going to pay for your groceries, your bills, and everything else you got to pay for every single month just to live. These are the thoughts and things you need to look at before you even think about looking at homes. Now, if you guys are in the process or will be in the future thinking about purchasing your first home or maybe buying a different home or upgrading, one thing I like to recommend is looking at a mortgage calculator. It gives you an idea of roughly what your payment's going to be every single month. Look at your price range. This will also give you an idea of how much house you can actually afford in your budget. And the way you can do this is by simply thinking about, let's say, how much you pay in rent, right? Let's say you're paying $1,500 a month in rent, and you can afford that pretty easily, and you're able to still pay for your groceries and maybe have a little bit left over to invest and pay some extra on some bills. So you want to keep your payment around $1,500. So what you can do is think about roughly what type of home you want to purchase and start from there. Let's say you want to buy a $300,000 home and you're going to have a 5% down payment on a 30-year fixed. You will have some PMI and stuff depending on which loan you have in there, so not all these numbers are going to be exact. And then the current interest rate, this is a little low. I'm going to say 7.25 right now. And then if you can go click advanced, include PMI, include taxes and insurance, and then you got to figure out in your area what roughly that would be. For taxes in my area, I'm going to put this at $3,000. Home insurance, $1,260. That's probably right around there. We're going to assume there's no HOA fees. And then what you do is scroll up and you can see your payment roughly would be $2,500, $2,480. That gives you a good idea of where to start. And if you were hoping to stick around that $1,500 mark, well, then you probably can't afford a $300,000 loan. Now, one other thing to keep in mind here, guys, is just because you're approved for a $300,000 loan, this is where this comes into play. Just because you can be approved based on guidelines of you can afford that home, that you can get approved for that home, doesn't mean that you can actually afford it. You still have to think about everything else you got to pay for.
Transparency post. I regret buying a house. I regret it a lot. If I could go back to January 2022, I would tell that girl, do not. Just find another apartment to move into, because doing all this shit that I have to do for this house and all the unexpected costs, high dollar unexpected costs that I keep running into, to be handling it by myself, is ass. So to all you young women who want to go out and buy a home, I encourage you to really, really think about it. Talk to some people and really see the ins and outs. I mean, it always sounds good. Oh yeah, your mortgage is only going to be $1,000 until they reevaluate your property taxes, and that bitch goes up $200. It's trash. 85 degrees, your AC is going to go out. You don't want to know how much that costs. It's trash.
So this is why I will never hate on renting. Like, if you know that you never want to own a home, you never want to deal with that stuff, you don't have to worry about maintenance, upkeep, fixing things, the whole 9 yards, and you want to rent your whole life and you're okay with not having any equity ever built up in your home, I see no problem with that, because renting has its benefits. You don't have to worry about maintenance. You don't have to worry about paying anything extra. You don't have to worry about emergency expenses to fix your AC. You don't have to worry about all the bull crap that comes with owning a home. The other benefit with renting is you have the flexibility to move on a whim. When you own a home, you have to list it on the market. It could be sitting in the market for 30, 60, 90 days or even more. Then you got to go through the whole selling process of actually selling your home through the title company and everything else. To where renting, you can just say, hey, landlord, after my lease is up, peace, I'm out of here. I'm done. See ya. You move on to the next one. So there are benefits in renting. But ultimately, when it comes to it, I'm always going to be the big believer of owning a home. But that's also because I do understand what goes into owning a home. A lot of people don't understand that until they actually, unfortunately, get into their home and then they find out all the upkeep, maintenance, items that need to be fixed, things that need to be done on the daily for preventative maintenance so then things don't end up breaking down the road. There's a lot that goes into ownership of a home. It's not as sexy as everyone thinks it is, where you post a video or a picture on Facebook that you bought a house and then that's it. You get to sleep in it every night and never do anything to it. If you have a yard, you got to take care of the yard. There's a lot of things that come with home ownership. Now, one thing she mentioned there that's very important to also understand is that your mortgage payment can actually go up. Now, principal and interest portion of the mortgage payment, that's not going to change. The only thing that will change on that is the amount of interest that you pay over the lifetime of the loan as you continue to pay down the principal of that loan. But if you escrow your property taxes and home insurance, and what escrow means is that gets built into the mortgage payment with your principal and interest payment, and it gets paid as one lump sum payment every single month. And then your mortgage company takes the escrow account and they pay your taxes and insurance for you. Me, personally, I just like to pay my bills on my own at the end of the month because I know I have that cash setting aside. I would rather keep that cash in my own account, earn interest on that money, and then whenever the bill comes, I can write a check and be done with it. But what you have to keep in mind here is that that bill and that amount on taxes and insurance can both go up. I saw a lot of people when I lived in Florida, their insurance bill was skyrocketing because of what's all going on down there currently. And that's very scary if you were already house poor and at the tip top of your budget when you first purchased that home, and now you have expenses that are skyrocketing that you don't have control of. That's scary.
Buying a home as a single parent is a bad idea. I'm a single parent who bought a home and I am thousands of dollars in debt. I thought that buying a home would be the best thing for my daughter and I. I didn't take into consideration property taxes. My mortgage went from $1,400 to $1,900 in 2 years. I'm in debt because I had 3 water leaks. Not only did I have to pay the rise in property taxes, but I had to pay for the maintenance in my home. I definitely believe that home ownership requires 2 incomes. All of the things that I could do before I bought the home, all of the things I could provide to my daughter before I bought my home, I can no longer do. I am what they call house poor. If you are a single parent looking to buy a home, I hope you have thousands of dollars in savings. Equity is cool and all, but when it comes at a price, I don't think I'm willing to pay it anymore.
Okay, so a couple things with that one. So I don't necessarily think you have to have dual income to purchase a home. I see many people who buy homes on their own. The thing that you have to think about is you can't jump into buying a home right away. You have to prep for this. You have to prepare yourself financially and mentally when you purchase a home because of all the things that come together once you own that home. So as she mentioned, unless you have thousands of dollars in the bank, you shouldn't be buying a home. I mean, yes, that's correct. That's 100% correct. You have to have thousands of dollars in reserves, not only for the worst, meaning you lost your job, you can't find another job for 6 months. How are you going to pay that mortgage payment? Well, when you have cash reserves in your bank and an emergency fund that covers all of your expenses for the month, and you can have that cover your expenses for 6 to 12 months, well, then you're fine. But you also have to have money set aside for whenever maintenance issues arise. Your AC goes out. How are you going to pay for that? It's an $8,000, give or take. Obviously, there's more or less you can pay for. $8,000 to $10,000 expense. Who's going to pay for that? Are you going to go borrow the money for that? Or are you going to have the cash set aside to go purchase it? So yes, although I don't necessarily agree with her on saying you need dual incomes to own a home, you just have to make sure that you're prepared and that you've planned accordingly before you make that leap to go purchase a home. You have to make sure you have a good down payment. You have to make sure that you've budgeted accordingly to understand what your mortgage payment is going to be. You also have to understand the amount of money you have to bring to the table, not just for a down payment, but also for closing costs. A lot of buyers tend to forget about the closing costs that are involved with buying a home, and they can be substantial depending on the price and the location of the home that you're purchasing. But it all comes down to, just like anything else financially, is you have to plan accordingly.
I am regretting buying a house. My fiance and I have not even lived in it for a year, and we had to buy an AC unit already, which is thousands and thousands of dollars. Obviously necessary and worth it, but very unfortunate. We're also trying to plan a wedding, so that was not ideal for the budget. And then we had to add gutters, and then on top of that, we now probably have to replace our water heater. Just can't catch a break. And before anyone comes at me, we did have an inspection. None of it was flagged. So it's been a rough day. It's been a rough couple months.
Unfortunately, guys, that is 100% normal. So when we purchased our home here, we bought this back in June. When we moved in, we noticed that there was a lot of just little things that needed to be fixed. The previous owners, I'll be honest with you, the guy just, I don't know if he's lazy or doesn't know how to do anything, but just so many little things that just were left unfixed from whenever they first built this home. Because this home was built 3 or 4 years ago, so it's not that old of a home. It's just little things from living in it that you would usually just either fix yourself or hire somebody to fix. He just never did anything. Also, the dumb aces that built this house, the shims that they used to place on top of the piers to level out my house, they used soft wood. So now these shims have crushed, and I am having a little bit of settlement issues that I have a foundation company that has to literally jack up my house and replace these shims. Stuff like that is what really just grinds your gears as a home buyer. But if there's one piece of advice that I have to any of you out there that either currently own a home or are thinking about buying a home in the near future, is please keep up on your preventative maintenance. It will save you a world of headache. There's lists out there on Google. You can Google search to watch videos. There's creators out there who are all about like taking care of a home. Watch those, understand those, and make sure you pay attention to your house. Change your AC filter. That's one of the biggest things people don't do, and it can really screw up a system. But if you just change it once every 30 to 60 days, it will substantially increase the life of your AC system. So make sure you're doing your preventative maintenance.
I became a homeowner at 22 years old, and I instantly regretted that shit, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna tell you why I regretted it, though. So I ended up putting 78,000 down on my house, right? And once you get your house, right, you become house poor. Okay? Now, everybody's not gonna be house poor. I was house poor. I'm just speaking from my experience, bro. I'm young as shit, buying a house. I'm house poor at this point. I'm like, damn. You know what I'm saying? I did not really gauge all the maintenance that it took to take care of a house. On top of that, I had to put work into the house. They sold us the house, right? Sold the house with mold in it. How did I not know it was mold in it? Did you not get an inspector? Yeah, I had an inspector. This what these dirty, nasty, gritty people did. Scantless, right? They painted over the mold so thick that the detectors couldn't get it. And it didn't even smell like mold down there, nothing. It was all dry, right? So I had to go in, get the walls chopped out, get the house waterproofed, whatever that came up to. So this is just more stuff you got to come out of. But all in all, I would say that I really regretted it once I figured out how much the maintenance was, bro. And like how often you got to do certain things. And obviously it makes it a little sweeter that it's your shit and it's an investment. But for me personally, I just was not ready for that. Now the house is about to sell. I actually don't know what I'm going to do with the cash that I do get from the house. Obviously, I might invest in another property. I think that's where my head's at. But just something to like rent out or something. You know what I'm saying? Not to live in. I can't do it. I'd rather live in an apartment. I'm going to be honest. You can call me crazy all you want. But I just feel like at this point in my life, I should be living in an apartment, bro. A house is a lot. It's a lot.
I mean, he's not wrong. A house can be a lot. It can be. And that's why I do recommend like younger people in their younger 20s. And honestly, if you're single in your 30s and you don't want to like settle down and stuff, like you don't need to buy a house. Like, you can buy investment properties, but you don't have to own a home. Because one thing I like about people who don't own homes is, like I said earlier, they have that flexibility to go wherever they want. And there's something to be said about that. Now, something else here to think about too when it comes to purchasing a home and to make sure that you're not getting in over your head is you have to understand where we're at in the cycle of the market in the real estate industry, right? Prices are at all-time highs. They have come down a little bit. But the problem we're seeing for people who purchased homes back in like 22, when everyone was outbidding the next person to try to get the home, is if you purchased a home and you put very little money down, and then let's say fast forward a year or two from now, real estate prices start coming back down to a more normal level, and then you are actually underwater on your home, that means you owe more on the property than what it's worth on the market today at the day that you go to sell it. That's something very scary that can happen. And that's kind of what happened back in 08 and 09 when all hell broke loose. Real estate prices plummeted and a lot of people were underwater on their homes and they couldn't afford their mortgage payment because they lost their job. And then when they needed to go sell their home, they couldn't sell their home because they owed more on the property than their home was actually worth. So if they would have sold their home, they still would have had to come up with $20, $30, $40, $50 plus $1,000 in order to pay off the loan. That's scary. And that can happen. So make sure when you're buying a home, you have money set aside, you can afford the home, you're putting enough down, and you're not getting in over your head. It's not worth it, guys.